All right, it's 7 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Everybody look them over.
I move the minutes be approved if submitted.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second that the minutes be approved as is. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Request for postponements. Looks like.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yes. We have, and in the interest of saving you some breath, the Bel Air's Phase 4C, 5A, and 5B final plats will be coming before the September meeting. In short, staff identified a problem and solution and then reached out to the applicant who agreed on the recommended solution. And we'll be resolving that at the next meeting. So you'll be seeing them in September. But for now, it has been postponed by the applicant with discussion from staff.
All right, next item, number 3, it's a public hearing. It's a waiver from section 20.201 of the subdivision regulation to exceed the development rights as a minor subdivision and allow for one more additional lot to be subdivided as a minor subdivision. Property owner Harold Barlow, property location 215 Twisted Oak Lane, Shepherdstown, West Virginia. There's your partial ID size. Lot size 44.88, zone district is rural.
Thank you, Commissioner. So in short, this is a large piece of property that has in the past done tuna residue followed by an additional tuna residue. And as you can see from the staff report, the first one was done in 2003 that essentially created 3 lots that were accessing off what would later become Twisted Oak Lane. This was followed by an additional minor subdivision of the following decade that created an additional 2 lots in the residue that's in question, the subject parcel. The applicant is looking to do one additional subdivision essentially around the existing residence. That is essentially for some additional estate planning. It should be noted that this Twisted Oak Lane, which is the 50-foot access easement required, currently only has 4 lots. If this waiver is approved, followed by the subdivision as proposed, this would be the 5th lot on it. So it is in conformance with that part of the requirements. However, the parent parcel has already been subdivided 5 times following the minor process. So per the subdivision regulations, and you can find that in section 20.201, essentially what they need to do is ask for a waiver to go past the 5 max in processing as a minor subdivision. This, of course, is accepted if the applicant proceeds as a family transfer lot. There's a note on that as well, but the applicant is endeavoring to do this as a minor residential subdivision, which is why they're before you this evening. Staff has received 2 public comments in written form that are included in your packets. You can find them there if you'd like to review them if you have not had the opportunity already. For the rest, I will hand off to the applicant and their consultant to speak to. Staff has a recommendation in there that can be discussed after the presentation. Unless you had any questions for me, I'd hand it over to the applicant.
Staff, you got any questions for staff? Applicant, come forward, state your name.
Sorry about that. That's all right. Name is Gary Fry. I'm a land surveyor and I represent Harold Barlow as the applicant. And the request is very straightforward. It is to subdivide a little over 5 acres around the existing house, septic field, well, driveway, garage, so that he can do some estate planning. He's looking to organize his financial affairs as he's advancing in age. And he would like to get things such that he could do that in a way that allows him some flexibility. By subdividing it, he is allowed to that would allow him to potentially do various ways of financing and so forth should the need arise. And his lot that we are proposing has been approved by the Department of Highways for the extra lot, for the lot to be cut around. There's no additional impact to roads or to the surface water, well water, any of that kind of thing. It's all around existing structures. We also have approval from the Health Department for the subdivision as well of this parcel. He has planned or he has in his mind possibly to do some additional family transfers with the rest of the residue. But not at this time. The only thing at the moment that we're talking about here is subdividing this 5+ acres off around the existing structures. He possibly could, in the future, if need be, convey the residue then to either a family trust or if he had to sell it to raise money if he needed to do that. There's really nothing hidden here as far as the motive. All he wants to do is cut this parcel out so that he can do his estate planning.
Commissioners, you got any questions?
I got a question. So you say the possibility of additional subdivision of the remaining 39.5 acres down the road?
Yes, he may want to do, and he's looking at possibly doing family transfers, which is a minor subdivision process.
Commissioners, any other questions for the applicant?
I do have a question for staff about the condition that was suggested if the planning commission were in contravention of staff recommendation to grant the waiver. And I'm hoping you could address that and how that would mitigate any of the issues created by this.
Of course. So in short, Planning Commission functionally has 3 different ways forward regarding this waiver. So it is to, and at least the ways that we track it within our minutes and understand and explain, because following whatever happens this evening, a minor subdivision plat would need to be pursued. So it can be, the application can be approved as presented, and that would be designating the 40 acres, as you can see both in your staff report as well as the application given by the applicant. I believe that is on page 11 of your packet. There's a smaller one in the staff report on page 6. The 40 acres would be designated as the residue, and that would retain the development rights and allow future family transfers from that residue. Alternatively, the planning commissioners can approve the waiver with the condition, well, A, with any condition that they had alternatively in mind, or with the one that staff suggested, which was solely written as a way to potentially mitigate concerns about additional subdivision using the residential minor subdivision process. This could be done as a family transfer, but if the concern at this time is to reduce the number of residential minor subdivisions processing in this way, as it is generally stopped by the subdivision regulations at this count, by designating Lot 5A, which is shown in the application as 5.30 acres, that would reduce the development rights to be only lots that could be subdivided off of that Lot 5A. So that would inhibit or just remove the ability for Mr. Barlow to subdivide potentially into the future as that is no longer locating those 40 acres as that. Now, to be clear here, that is not a requirement. That was just a suggestion by staff if the primary concern is how much further subdivision can be done on this lot. And third, the planning commissioners can, of course, deny the waiver. So those are essentially those three potential ways forward and how those relate to the development rights that Mr. Barlow has on his properties.
If I may address that. To designate the proposed 5A, the 5+ acres as a residue is a non-starter for my client. And that is because as staff said, it would reduce the development rights of the residue. And that would reduce any equity that he would be able to get in the future should he need to convey that property or borrow against it. In addition, the only other alternative here is to do this as a major subdivision. And if he does that, then he has to recoup the cost of the tens of thousands of dollars that it would cost in engineering costs. And to do that might require him to put more lots than what he really wants to do. So he just wants to cut this piece of property off so he can do some planning on his estate. It's not, though it's possible in the subdivision ordinance for him to do it as a family transfer. He really practically cannot because he lives in that house. And how many of us would convey the house and the property we're living in to somebody else? That's just not a reasonable way of going about it. So that's why we're here as a waiver request for the 5A.
Any more questions for the applicant? All right. Not, we'll open up the public comment. When I call your name, come down, state your name and your address. Sue Cardello.
You can come up here if you like. If you'd rather sit, we can make that happen.
All right, I think I'll stand. Wait a minute. I'm Sue Cardella, and I live about a half mile away from Twisted Oak on Persimmon Lane. And my comments will be very, very brief, I promise. And other than the concerns, wait a minute, excuse me. Other than the concerns I expressed in my written comments, which include increased traffic, loss of habitat, loss of peace and quiet, the subdivision would be antithetical to the tenor and overall mood of our lane as it exists, and especially as it used to exist. This would benefit no one but Mr. Barlow. I'm going to relay some comments made to me by my neighbor who cannot be here tonight because of health reasons. She lives directly across from Mr. Barlow's residue. Her and her husband moved here in 2000. He has since passed away. Her husband had a riding horse and he used to go cross country on the land that was undeveloped all around our area. There are currently 4 lots with subdivision style houses that sit where he used to ride. 2 of those adjoin my and my husband's property. We must daily endure the constant noise, machines, and drunken parties that come from those houses. That or one man on a horse, I know which I would prefer. The neighbor in question sent me the following text. So I'm just reading directly from her text. We all moved out here for peace and quiet. And more houses means more traffic and more noise. Pretty soon, it's going to be like living in town. I recently saw another quote that well describes this situation. A vacant lot isn't seen as a habitat. It's seen as a development opportunity. Everything has a price. Thank you for listening to my comments.
Thank you. Well, that's all that's signed up for public comment. This time we'll close public comment. Applicant, you want to, anything else? You don't have to, but if you have anything else you want to say for, far as we'll come about public comment.
Hasn't been a horse in that place over probably 3 to 4 years. No, there's no animals at all.
Could you move a little bit closer to the microphone, please? We can't really hear you.
Yeah, there's no other even animals in the whole 44 acres that I have. And the main reason that I have the kids, it's a pretty good size house, and I can't divide it up. When I die, I can't, give it to all of them because there's too many of them. There's probably enough money if he sells it that he can buy a house. Maybe even each of the 5 people that really need a place one day.
So my clarification, you already have an improved structure that we are dividing off. So there's no additional dwellings that are being built as part of this request. Is that correct?
But you go ahead.
That is correct. Everything that we're talking about here is for existing, to go around existing structures. There's no new dwellings. There's nothing new being planned here. Absolutely not.
And just to clarify, for folks in the audience, our subdivision regulations and our zoning allows for 1 house per 5 acres in rural, except for clustered. And in this case, it's 5.3 acres. So they're essentially encompassing 1 improved lot that cannot be further subdivided on that lot. So there's no new home that could be built with this request, for clarification. Thank you.
Mr. Barlow, how long have you lived on that property?
It's been, I sold the house, and then I built that one there 5 years ago. And we had another place that we had a building, and we put a house around that, and it's, my grandkids, my father and my son and his wife have been there. They lived there. And we lived there again while we were rebuilding the new house.
So I guess my question is, how long has this been in your family?
This has been in their family since 1983,
Thank you.
and it was put under a farm family trust.
I have a question for staff. Would you explain to us your recommendation for denial?
Based on the subdivision regulations, how they parse out the creation of 5 residential lots while it's at a time is based on the whether or not they're using the minor process after October 1988. Essentially, what you're getting at is the subdivision regulations. If you're creating more than 5 from the parent parcel as it existed in 1988, recommends that it should be done as a major. And this is functionally as a way to prevent sprawl throughout the community. But I'd also note that there are other extenuating circumstances, some of which Planning Commission has seen in the past as to potentially be granting this waiver. So that's why both a condition of approval was mentioned, but also I would note that the Planning Commission can just approve this waiver as presented, as there can be circumstances that are, occur that are speculated that do not conform with the subdivision regulations themselves.
So What could they do as a major subdivision?
Are you asking how many lots they
Yeah.
could potentially be putting in? That depends what they try to pursue within the rural zoning district. To pursue as a cluster, it is based upon the original acreage. I don't believe we did a specific calculation of that within the PPC memo itself. I do not feel comfortable fully speculating outside of something that's firmly in the zoning sphere, but you could be looking at potentially a dozen lots minus the 4 to 5 that have already been created based on that history. So it could be done hypothetically to subdivide off another 6 lots using the clustering provisions. They do not, or likely would not, following the 15 acres parts of the zoning provisions. And again, they could do a total of 12 through family transfers, or more accurately would do or considering the 4 and the residue they already have, they could do an additional 7 as family transfers, which would also equal to be about what is functionally within their cluster provisions. And of course, majors also come with stormwater as well as other specific requirements that don't necessarily apply as often in the rural, including potentially recreation areas, although that's again based on the density, so I don't think it would apply in this case, but that would be the number of lots you're looking at.
I have a
Commissioners?
question about family transfers. Is it possible for Mr. Barlow to transfer this to a family member and then that family member to immediately transfer it back to him?
That is correct. I should note specifically before I give such an unqualified statement, I do not know if Mr. Barlow has received a family transfer in the past. And that would be the one sticking point to that regard, because they can only receive one family transfer lot in their life in Jefferson County.
Mr. Barlow, have you ever received a family transfer?
No, sir.
Commissioners, anything else?
I move we
Yeah,
approve the waiver as written.
May I ask one more? Well, maybe there's a second. We can have it as a deliberate.
I'll second.
Okay.
It's been properly moved in second, now discussion.
Right. Okay. A couple points. One, I mean, I think if you look at the legal standard, it trips me up because it's a pretty tough standard to meet in terms of showing that there's a public benefit. And it seems to me in the face of public opposition, even though granted, some of the complaints in the written comments were not necessarily cognizable, but there are necessarily concerns about increasing density beyond what is permitted under the ordinance and by way of a waiver. And so it seems to me that's a very strong affirmative showing that has to be made, that it will not adversely affect a neighboring property owner. And I don't see how that affirmative, in the face of opposition, how that affirmative standard can be met. I do think, though, and it ties to a question of a possible other condition that which doesn't necessarily satisfy all the public concerns, but some of them, I think under previous iterations of our ordinance, when a minor subdivision went into a rural zone, there was a requirement of like 100-foot buffer, natural vegetation buffer. And the effect of that is you hardly know that you have I live in the rural zone, and you hardly know that those subdivisions exist. So the concerns people have about, I don't like your lawnmower, I don't like your drunken party, all that stuff, it sort of goes away when there's a sufficient buffer. So I guess what I would wonder is whether you would accept as a condition a requirement for 100-foot natural vegetation buffer between the property and that would be, that would not be on the parcel that's being created, but on the, it's not the residue because you're calling the residue the 5, but whatever, the 39 acres that's on Persimmon Lane that
Well, we have.
I got a question about that.
But
Is
I
that,
don't-
is it your property? How can we sit here where somebody's got a piece of property that wants to put something on his property and will require a 150-foot buffer
Nah.
of vegetation between other property? Look at the developments that's around here.
Forgive me, I meant 100-foot, which is what we previously had under the standard for the public road, not for every other property owner, but for the public
Mr.
road.
President, I move
But-
division.
We got a motion on the table. It's been properly moved and seconded. Let's vote on the motion to accept what was the motion again? To accept it as is?
Accept the waiver as written.
Accept the waiver as written. It's been properly moved and seconded, accepted as written. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries.
Thank
Next
you.
agenda item is number 4. It's a public hearing, final plat amendment to lift the single-family restriction to allow for construction of a detached accessory dwelling unit for a family member. See note number 3 on deed book 978, page 122. Property owner, Tom Denali. Property location, Nolan Minor Subdivision, Lot 2, 1792 Myerstown Road, Charlestown, West Virginia. There's your partial ID. Lot size is 10.88 acres, zoning district rural. Staff?
Thank you. So when the Noland Minor subdivision, which is the subdivision that created the subject property, was first approved under the 79 subdivision regulations, a note was required that functionally, I should have pulled this out, restricted each lot to a single family residence only. We get a series of these applications from time to time because in the event anyone looking to put in an accessory dwelling unit comes forth, this note needs to be removed. To amend a final plat, what our current subdivision regulations require is that it's go through the same process in which it was approved to have it amended. In 79, it first had to go before the Planning Commission prior to its approval. So to amend it, it is back before you guys today. So to remove this note, it will allow the applicant to put in place an accessory dwelling unit, to my understanding, for a family member. I would also note, as you guys can see in the staff report, a zoning variance was recently granted. It's not really pursuant to this request, but as part of this project, they also look to extend the maximum allowed square footage of the accessory dwelling unit. So in short, they're looking to remove that note to put in an ADU for a family member. I'd leave the rest for the applicant, and staff's recommendation is at the bottom of the staff report.
Is the applicant here? Come on up here and state your name and.
Name's Tom Donnell. You want me to just go ahead?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so basically what happened is we bought this property. The intention is actually that my father will be living in the house that's currently on the property, and then I will be building a new house on the property pending your approval for my wife and 4 children. The reason this got kind of mixed up is because of the timing of the 2 meetings, but essentially the last one was to increase the square footage of the accessory dwelling to the square footage of the house that is currently there on the property, because it is, I don't have it right in here in front of me, 2,800 or something like that. And then our house that we're going to build there is going to be roughly 3,500 with a finished basement, including that finished basement, I mean. So yeah, pretty much that's it. We don't want to subdivide the land because it's just intended to remain a family property. Once he passes, I will keep it there. I will put that other house into use by one of my children, their wives, children, stuff like that. So really, kind of to the opposite effect of what we were just talking about with the last request. The interest of this is actually to keep this a familial property infinitely. I don't want to subdivide it. There's no intention to ever sell this. So really the whole idea is just to keep the family together and to keep that as one piece of familial property with 2 homes.
Okay. Commissioners, you have any questions for the applicant?
And you'd have to, like, you'd go through the health department for well septic.
Correct. Yeah, that process has already been started right now. Septic, it's been dug. They're just waiting for approval from the health department. I am already dealing with a contractor that is Blue Mountain Homes. So they're working on that. And I'm also working on getting a survey done. Just haven't been able to get it done yet to this point. But yeah, there'll be septic and a well drilled as well.
A question for staff.
Go ahead.
Can you state the maximum size for an ADU under the zoning district?
I can look it up real quick because I have the file name here. So if you stand by, I can
And-
find that.
And what the request, you said there's going to be a request for increase in that.
I should add some okay.
If I may, that request has already been approved.
It has been, it's before the BZA because it's specifically under those zoning ordinance requirements. And that's outside of the scope of this, but I can still find it.
I believe it was 1,700.
That
1,700, it was. what
Sounds
we
Was the
requested.
original limit for an accessory dwelling unit. I think it was
Okay.
around 1,700. I already went before at the end of July and had that increased to the size of the existing structure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Subject to our approval.
Subject, exactly. Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the commissioners? All right, thank you. This time we'll open up the public comment. Since there's none signed up, we'll close public comment.
Commissioner Garcia, to answer your question and to compliment Mr. Donnell, yes, it is 1,700 square feet is the max. And of course, variance was granted to extend it to actually a bit under 2,800, but
Okay,
fantastic
yeah.
memory.
All right. Thank you.
All right, what's the pleasure of the group?
Second.
It's been properly moved and second to approve it as is. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'll just make some general comments, Mr. President. So in general, from the planning perspective, I think these are good things to do for properties to have an accessory dwelling unit. The intent to have a familial arrangement is a good thing. I think that's whether it's in a rural area or in suburban or even urban areas and certain places where that's really good use of land. Conversely, obviously, we just heard a case about moving a boundary. I know there's concern about density. Obviously, that's not the request right now. That was before this board, but I am encouraged that this board and applicants are coming forward with this type of land use. So I'll be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? If not, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Thank you guys very much.
Next is agenda item number 5. It's public hearing. It's final plat amendment to lift the single family restriction to allow for the construction of a detached accessory dwelling unit for a farm caretaker. See note number 4 on plat book 12, page 34. Property owner David and Doreen Levy, property location 383 Woven Heart Way, Charlestown. Parcel ID lot size is 19.68 acres, zoning district rural.
It should be noted that we typically don't see two of almost exactly the same requests back to back, but here we are again. Functionally, this is the same request in the Kelly subdivision. Once again, it was approved under the old subdivision regulations and the same note was included. I'd say the two larger things to note on this particular property, as there is not an existing residence, this is an anticipation of that into the future. And this specific one is for an accessory agricultural dwelling unit, essentially for a farm caretaker. But again, it is the same note that they are asking to lift. Staff recommendation is at the bottom of the staff report, and I will hand it over to the applicant for the rest of the presentation.
Thank you,
Go ahead.
Mr. President, staff, commissioners. I'm Paul Rocco, a local land use consultant. I'm here tonight on behalf of Dave and Doreen Levy. It is similar, if not exactly the same request that was the previous applicant. I can't help myself to explain the background because it sounds like somehow that note just got added to plats. But back in the late 80s, people that you started using minor subdivisions because there was no site plan regulations for commercial. The only way you could regulate commercial development was through the subdivision of land where the stormwater and you could pick up those things. So people were starting to use minor subdivisions to create lots and then come back and put a commercial business on the property and we couldn't regulate them. So that provision was strictly for that, which it should have probably gone away back in 88 when zoning came into effect. It started to allow different uses for lots. And then in 89, we finally used the improvement location permit ordinance to write the site plan standards for commercial dwellings for those properties that didn't subdivide. Fast forward to 2008, when the provision to limit single-family restrictions on minor subdivisions actually left. So the only reason was to grab the commercial developments that were trying to just be placed on minor subdivisions without stormwater, landscaping, and things like that. So that's the only reason. There was no such thing as accessory dwelling units back then. Most times it was within the dwelling unit itself. So those became popular back in the later 90s. And so if there are subdivisions and minor subdivisions that existed between those times in that late 80s and the 90s with that restriction, this is the process you have to go through to modernize the subdivision. It's a larger subdivision. I just like to give some history of the ordinance standards. It's a larger subdivision. There's two 20-acre lots and a 10-acre lot. It is for a caretaker, in this case for a farmette for some livestock to watch over that. So would ask that single-family restriction be released.
Commissioners, you have any questions for the applicant? If none, then we'll open up the public comment. Since no one signed up, we'll close the public comment.
Make a motion, we approve the waiver as written.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve the waiver as written. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Next, we have agenda item number 6, discussion and possible action regarding dry hydrant research. Presentation by staff of preliminary ordinance draft regarding dry hydrant regulations in the region.
Thank you, commissioners. Staff, since the previous direction, has been hard at work creating the backbone of what some dry hydrant regulations could be. So this is a presentation of both research, analysis, and some beginning text. I'd like to iterate that this is probably not the final form it will take, as of course there needs to be both the public hearing before Planning Commission and adoption and public hearing before County Commission. There's a few other minor technical and process things that staff would also look to investigate. But for the rest of this show, I'd like to hand it off to Madison and John, who've done all this work to bring this to you tonight.
Go ahead.
Hey, guys.
Good evening, good evening, members of the Planning Commission. Today's staff is here to talk about the research we conducted on implementing a dry hydrants ordinance for Jefferson County. So on the July 14th Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission motioned staff to research dry hydrants deeper, specifically asking for, one, the responsible party maintaining the dry hydrants, two, whether the subdivision size affected who the responsible maintainer, and number three, the minimum capacities for the impounded water supply it draws from. The planning commission made the motion at the July 14th meeting to work towards a draft ordinance for dry hydrants in major subdivisions, both existing and new, and new. In response to the planning commission's motion, staff conducted comparative research on how other counties did regulate dry hydrants. The geographical area was across the tri-state area of Maryland, West Virginia, and Virginia, over 26 counties. However, couple counties, namely Wicomico County, Maryland, and Matthews County, Virginia, were dropped from further analysis due to the lack of information from them. Next, the definition of dry hydrants. A dry hydrant is
is a fire hydrant that has a non-pressurized permanent pipe assembled to hook it up to a body of water to serve communities that don't have a centralized system.
Thank you.
In your packet, though, is there are a couple of visual diagrams of what the dry hydrant looks like.
Page 40. Okay. This is great. Thank you, John.
My pleasure.
Anything else?
Anything else?
I'll take over from the legality side of it. So per the West Virginia State Codes, under Section 8A, under minor subdivisions, land development processes cannot mandate developing new or extending existing off-track infrastructure. However, in this case, we are discussing major subdivisions at this time. In addition, we also have Section 24.2.1R, which establishes the requirements for fire hydrants installation. Within the ordinance that we're proposing, we are following the national standards, so we will be addressing that part of the state code. It's also important to note that building code at this time does not regulate dry hydrants unless they're connected to a potable water supply, public or private wells. I also took a look at the West Virginia Fire Marshal, who does not regulate dry hydrants. However, the Public Service Commission is responsible for ensuring that they are properly maintained. Staff review, however, has not identified any statutes or legislative rules that specifically regulate or oversee dry hydrants from the fire marshal. Within our subdivision regulations, under Article 22, Infrastructure and Grading, we have a provision that says the adequate provision of infrastructure, including streets, potable water, sewer, and fire protection to serve developments. So we are here forward with this ordinance draft. Based on those reviews, staff is proposing a preliminary plat approval process for major subdivisions. The reason why we are making these preliminary plat changes is that preliminary plats include construction details necessary for engineering approval and bond estimate calculations. In addition, at the preliminary plat stage, they are presented to the Planning Commission in a public hearing format. This will give members of the public an opportunity to comment on aspects of proposed major subdivisions. So before going into detail on the changes, I'll be presenting the reasons for those requests. So Article 23 identifies the responsibilities of other agencies. So staff will make changes to that article as well. We have also made changes to Article 24 under procedures and administration so that we can address the approval requirements for those preliminary plats, along with Division 1 of Appendix Plan and Plat Standards, which is the requirements necessary for preliminary plat approval. And then Division 3 of Appendix B shall have a new section that defines and stipulates requirements for dry hydrants. So with that said, the first one is going to be the Division 23-200 under Administration, Other Agencies. We propose adding a line underneath Emergency Services, giving those services the opportunity to provide recommendations at the concept plan stage on the location of dry hydrants. And then we also have Division 24-100, the processing of application, where we define fire safety. So the Planning Commission can deny or approve preliminary plats that are that are not in compliance with the section. Planning Commission can also attach conditions through these provisions. So by attaching this fire safety provision, you would be able to make your conditions for that. In addition to that, we also give Division 1 plan and plat requirements, where we maintain that all fire safety maintenance notations must be maintained on the plat itself. So while inspections and maintenance is done by another entity, both notations, as you can see in A and B, that any entity who uses the dry hydrant will be responsible for refilling said hydrant. Now, the two main difference between those two is either an HOA or a property developer will be financially responsible for it, or B, no HOA, and thus the local fire department. Then you have Division 3.0, which is the utilities and water sanitary system, which I will be handing back over to John to discuss.
That's a lot of information. Thank you. You did a good job.
You did do a good job. I would like to compliment both of you on both your research and your writing skills. Very, very clear and well presented.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyhow, thank you, Madison, for discussing the legalities of implementing a dry hydrant ordinance, as well as starting off with our proposed dry hydrant regulation. I'll be finishing off with the actual dry hydrant regulations that we propose under the engineering standards, or Appendix B, Division 0, Section 3.1. So first, we propose deleting the reference to dry hydrants in subsection 3.1.B.12. That's because we'll be adding a new subsection 3.1.C called non-centralized alternative fire protection. And as part of that will be telling the requirement of subdivisions of 5 or more lots, that is, major subdivisions that are not linked to a central water system, must have a dry hydrant. That means one dry hydrant. It must be installed by the developer and meet minimum standards of a minimum flow of 1,000 gallons per minute at draft, and be served by an impounded water supply of at least 45,000 gallons, as well as meet specifications by the Jefferson County Office of Emergency Management and acceptable to its chief county engineer. Lastly, the maintainer can either be the HOA or the developer. Those were those were the proposed text amendments for dry hydrants.
Thank you.
Great job, John.
Did a good job.
So.
Go ahead. I'll go next.
You good, Daniel?
Bruce, I'm just assuming you want to go first.
Okay, well, so I'm okay with this, and what I'd like to do is I'd like to make a motion to push this to the Fire and Rescue Association at their next meeting, so that they have a chance to review this and give back any suggestions and additions. I already see 3 things here that need to be moved around a little bit, and this should fall into the realm of the county fire chiefs for their input. I'll want it here as a presentation, so it needs to go back to their association. So I'll make the motion to send it back to them.
Well, I'll second that.
Could I offer a friendly amendment to his, well, actually, no. Discussion, I'd like to add that in this, we talked about one of the sources of approving something could be the local, maybe we should consider an actual approval by the fire association, so that before it goes to a concept plan, it has to have approval by the agency. So it's not just one company, but it's all
Right.
together
As a group.
Yes. Maybe that's but that's for future.
Right, well, COVID like I said, on this motion, they send it back to them for review, so that they have a chance to lay out.
Sorry to interject. Commissioner Chrisman, is your mic on?
So I've talked with them, so they have a chance to put eyeballs on it. This is the first time it's anything, it's in writing, so that they have a chance to put their eyeballs onto this and give any comments. Because three of them have contacted me back today and they're 100% for this, but this thing can be downplayed a little bit with size and things like that. And one of the things was authority having jurisdiction on review. For example, was dry hydrants were installed shall meet the specifications standards as established by the Jefferson County Office of Emergency Management. That needs to be put back to, would be back to the fire chief. You know what I'm saying? There's just little sub things that needs to be addressed. So my motion is to kick it back to them. That's the first motion I've got, is to kick it back to them and let them review it and present it back to us at our next meeting.
All right, we have a motion and we have a second.
Could staff clarify that motion a little bit? So it's to to send it to the fire chiefs and whatever associate.
The Fire Chiefs and Rescue Association,
Fire
they hold their
chiefs.
meeting the first Tuesday of each month, right? Yep, first Tuesday of each month.
And to return to an earlier conversation, to have staff present it if they
Yes,
would
staff
invite
presents
us.
this to them so that they understand. So it's coming from not coming from me, it's coming from them so that they have questions, they can direct it to them and address there.
So the motion is for staff to present this at the next Fire
And Rescue Association,
Rescue Association meeting, which is on the first Tuesdays of every month.
right?
And it's been seconded. Any more discussion?
Yeah, one more point of discussion in the same vein, but I think that's priority. I do have some concerns, and maybe this needs to go back to staff a little bit about HOA's ability to do this and legality of that.
That's,
Did your research show, at least with the text you provided, that that's something that's written into restrictive covenants, or
So
what's the, can you give me some background on that? Because I know the West Virginia, I don't know if
Well,
it's stational HOAs.
let me add a question to that because my question is adjacent to yours. So also, what do we do if the HOA goes under? And what's the provision there if the HOA goes under also?
so that was my next motion. I was going to ask after this one got passed, which we've motioned second, we haven't passed it, so we can't make another motion yet.
I can
was-
table the question and then
So
move forward
I
with the
had
original
a
motion.
motion to proceed with that because that's been brought up, the word maintenance
Well,
defined.
let's keep the discussion on the motion at hand here.
Yeah, we'll table my question for later.
Okay.
Ms. Edwards?
On the motion, I certainly support that consultation. This struck me as I wanted it to incorporate an objective standard. So it seems to me that one dry hydrant may not be sufficient based on, the size of the development, the composition of the buildings, the
Right.
space between them, and all of those considerations, which I think go into like an 1142 standard for adequacy. And I just wonder whether our regulations should just incorporate that as a standard for all major subdivisions must meet, and maybe put the onus on the developer to demonstrate that as opposed to expecting our public servants to do that kind of evaluation on a new project. I
Staff
just
could
ask colleagues if that would be appropriate.
could interject here. That could be part of the question that we come to the fire chiefs and the rescue association when we present to them that, this is ideally a two-way wave of communication. And some of those questions about the best way to determine the number of hydrants, staff is a bit leery of outside associations doing approval if they don't have, say, a permit process, much like, say, the Division of Highways does. But I would also add as a bit of this is a little off the motion, but just in regards to that, the concept plans do not require any other organizations to give any permits or approvals at that time, as it's still conceptual. So some back and forth on that might be called for, related to questions we can ask the fire chiefs and what can go into this presentations and questions when staff presents them in September.
So
Okay, I was just suggesting objective standard, not
Right.
that,
Let's get this
it could
motion
be
done.
evaluated by staff, or just an objective standard
Right.
as opposed to staff shall decide. That doesn't give us much, it doesn't give developers much notice about what's expected.
That would be a concern
So-
as well.
Let's,
let's get this one done and I'll follow on with that.
All right.
Because there's other comments that answer your
all
question.
right, is there any more discussion on this motion so we can move on? If not, proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Pose, like sign. Motion carries.
Okay, my next motion would be in reference to your maintenance one, and you all had. I would like to ask if our legal could look into what kind of teeth we had for enforcement and regulation on maintenance on those. So I know some jurisdictions have it if there's no HOA, so it falls back to the residents. That kind of, you're assuming responsibility of something that's part of your area that you live. You know, if there's a fenced area, you have to maintain the fence. If you have to do this, you have to do that. I was wondering if legal could look at that and bring us something back at the next meeting as far as what they found with something that's got teeth in it.
I would dovetail that same question with HOAs.
Kind of putting it together, yeah.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing for those HOAs to do that. I know there's some legal standing with depending on what kind of HOA it is and that. I just want to be reasonable about it. I have no problem putting that onus on the property owners, but again, we need to be clear about, and even if there's any case law prohibiting that, which is a little murky with HOAs, even if, whether it's here in West Virginia or across the nation.
Well, that's what I'm asking. So if it's either HOAs with what you're saying, or we bring it right back to, okay, you bought a piece of property on this cluster of properties, so that falls under your responsibility as part of your property. So I was just wondering if legal could look at that and come back with us on that.
So I can speak a little bit that while Steve gets his microphone on the Planning Commission packet page 34, our staff has done research on maintainers. So those are various organizations that maintain, and they summed it up into the public entity, fire typically, or EMS, maintains it. Private entities, your HOAs, or a bit of a joint. So if this does come down to a legal question, and I don't know if this entirely addresses both your question, Commissioner Garcia, or Commissioner Hayes, that the HOAs, we have found that they are the ones responsible for maintaining it. And in the event that an HOA goes bust, I mean, you could ask the same questions about landscaping or pool houses sometimes on HOAs. And I know that's just me going, welp, but I don't really have a better response to that, truthfully.
That's what I'm asking, if we can find out if it's got teeth in it.
It's probably.
So did you make a motion,
I'm making a motion that legal look into it.
Second.
or it's been properly moved and seconded, that staff recommend, or commission recommends legal look into the legalities of this?
I don't mind doing it. My suggestion to follow up was, right now, we're sort of in a proto thing, and then follow up with the actual entire ordinance. But I can look at, so basically, I'm going to just reframe the question. I'm sorry. If we require a dry hydrant, what mechanism does the county have to compel someone to maintain it? And the other question is, can that someone be an HOA?
HOA or property owner. So if there's no HOA, so all of us live in this development that's sitting here at this table, and we decide we're not going to have an HOA, but we're paying for snow removal, we're paying for this, we're paying for that. But we bought the property knowing that that dry hydrant's
I
there.
believe in the presentation, you mentioned that it's under state code maintained by the PSC, right? They have the governing authority, so it would be in conformance with their standards. And then we as a commission wouldn't necessarily be legally overseeing them. Is that, unless?
I would also like to interject that a PSC, from what our findings, is for fire hydrants. They don't necessarily say dry hydrant specifically. So in order to keep in compliance with them, our ordinance is leaning more towards keeping with their fire hydrant standards of markings and
Gotcha.
maintenance.
Okay. But is my question the right way, the way I'm presenting the question for them to investigate? Okay.
Yeah.
Looking for head shaking.
All right, we got a motion and we got a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Okay, and then I have a question regarding this discussion. So on, one second. So there's several categories with impact fees that we can establish as a county. Water, wastewater, stormwater, transportation, schools, parks, public safety, to name a few. I think this would go under public safety, as this would be equipment related to fire service. So one question I have for Bruce and others to consider when you go to the Fire Rescue Association and maybe with their ARCAD system, is that what it's called? Finding areas, because these are going to be just for new developments. But what
Right.
if we have areas that are kind of gray zones where we have no fire hydrants within an X radius?
Mhm.
and maybe we could pinpoint.
So Commissioner
a-
Garcia asked me at the last meeting about the map that I have. I didn't
Yeah,
have it tonight because we weren't at that point.
I think we're,
Yes.
it's I think two things, and I think rightfully so. We're looking at legislation right now to incorporate into our subdivision regulations and or development regulations of sorts. The other part is the planning part. So this could be something we take on with staff and look at over the long term, where are areas we need to be aware of this that needs to have those services. And what do we do about it? How is that going to occur? So I think valid question, and that's very much, I'm thinking that it needs to be, take the CAD system.
So
use-
I have, you asked me about the map. I just didn't bring it tonight because I knew this was
It's
just
okay.
preliminary.
But yeah,
So-
if we just get the data and if this is a background project, maybe for staff, that we start mapping that out in GIS, and then we can kind of have more of a little plan that maybe dovetail into our overall plan as far as the comprehensive plan. That's an item that we have that kind of as a thing to do for the future. So I think the ordinance, moving forward with an ordinance or an amendment to the ordinance would be great. And then we took a look at how we execute that. I think it's kind of backwards.
Yeah.
Or usually the plan informs what the zoning should do and the subdivision regulations should do. But in this case, this is kind of a technical exercise where we need to get something to ensure that we have the appropriate service in the areas we need it. And then we'll have to kind of back into a plan that's going to help us achieve that.
And,
Well, I
and
thank you for bringing that up because that's important.
it is. And this wouldn't necessarily be coming under the purview of Planning Commission, but because we're talking about it, it's something that I could bring up as an agenda item to consider for the county commission. And our authority is we are allowed to address impact fees once a year. And so if we have a potential modification to our expert that, understands our impact fees for new development, this is a specific question that we could ask. That wouldn't necessarily, involve a whole study, but an impact fee of needing dry hydrants with all the growth in the county is a fair question I may bring forward. I don't think we need a motion here,
No.
but I think it's worth discussing here.
Well, could you
Commissioner
take that to
Keys,
them?
if I may interject one thing, in anticipation of this conversation, I did reach out to the county administrator regarding impact fees, of which I am not an expert on. And they said, to sum up essentially how they believe impact fees work, if the planning commission would like to request the commission to have the county commission's expert who does our impact fees, his name is here, run the numbers, please have them pass the motion and then put it in as an agenda request. And of course, as an alternate, I do understand you can add stuff to the county commission agenda on your own. But this was given to me by the county administrator regarding questions for impact fees, but I think that was more holistically versus you as a county commissioner.
So do
I
we
just
need to
wanted
make
to
a
add that
motion
as
to give
well.
you teeth for this for the,
Would you guys,
I make a motion.
Second.
okay, so the motion probably would be something along the lines of a motion to have the county commission consider the impact fee for dry hydrants / fire hydrants for fire under a potential modified impact fee schedule.
When was that review of the impact fee schedule come up?
I believe the last time we modified it about a year ago, I think. When's the last time we instituted about a year and a half ago, but I believe we made a minor modification to it. So I'd have to look at the timeline of that. It may have to wait. But you can still, before you make a change, you can still, I believe, look into the fee structure, and we'd have to reach out with other agencies to see what the impact would be. So I believe we can still look at it.
I was just thinking we probably need to have this ordinance more fleshed out before we can come up with a number.
Right.
Well,
no,
no, it's kind of separate because this would be for
non-existent locations like
Yeah.
roadways or putting them into waterways. If we have a stream that's already there, Middleway's got a stream that's already down there on whatever the street is going through there and installing a dry hydrant there for, let's say it's reaching 40 foot out, or Tim's got a pond that's sitting out there. So it's an existing, so it's minimum of pennies to put it in, but it might be someplace like on Shirley Road, which is a very rural area, and there's nothing there. So they end up putting a 60,000 gallon tank in under the impact fees. So,
So it could be the parcel that we just allowed for subdivision under their modified process.
Yes.
And then would they need that? So I
Yeah.
think that's the.
You know, if you looked at me and said, would you allow this to go on your property? I'm going to say, sure, no problem. It helps my insurance rating. And all I'm going to ask you to do is put a fence back over the top because I can still run cattle across the ring.
So I would agree, Commissioner Keys, that tandem effort
Right.
to get that before the commission to look at the impact fees, because there's going to be a cost associated with it, especially if it's no HOA.
Right.
Or the HOA cannot do it for a reason. I don't know how that would work.
Or we're putting it on roadways that the fire chiefs identify in their area.
Agreed.
Like you had identified under the schedule and you had identified for the maps, which I will have that for the next one. But if it's there, then hey, fire chief of Middleway says, they put a request in and they take a priority by fire risk of the map that shows the most fires we've had for that rural area. So they say, okay, Middleway, you get 2, Shepherdstown, you get 1, Blue Ridge Mountain, you get 1. In Independent Sense, you get none this year. You know what I'm saying? So the money appropriate. So.
Do you have the motion, what you need?
I'm not entirely sure. I'm not sure who made the motion and seconded it. Commissioner Keys stated it.
Right.
I
And-
restated it. It was Bruce and then
Yes.
Daniel.
I made them, yeah.
Okay, Bruce, Daniel, that's a third
You just
motion.
explained it.
And it's the
Explained it.
motion to functionally put that agenda request before the county commission with this motion to consider impact fee schedules regarding dry hydrants. I know Quinn got that better than I did. Then I think we're good. Is there anything that planning commission would like me to
And-
include
and
as
to-
part of that agenda
And
request?
to ask the impact fee
Michael.
person, what do we call it, impact? And to ask the impact fee subject matter expert to estimate
Right.
the impact.
All right, it's been properly moved in second. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Agenda item number 7, discussion regarding athletic sports complex, presentation by staff on the research complex regarding athletic sports complex regulations in the region.
So just as a brief preface, this came before you. I actually, fortunately, couldn't be here this evening, but Andy brought to your attention that we had an applicant come forward who was interested in pursuing a specific project that is not currently defined in the zoning ordinance. So this is what brought us to drafting this, not mentioned just to holistically continue to update our ordinances to be as helpful as possible. But staff has been doing research, and when I say staff, I mean, of course, Madison and John, who've been putting this research and analysis together. We're looking for some direction this evening as to if you like the definitions that they have drafted, and if any changes need to be made, as this one we would like to keep moving along as we believe it is in a good state. And without further ado, I shall hand it off to John and Madison.
So as of the April 14th, the Planning Commission did direct staff to do that draft zoning ordinance text amendment that Mr. Siegfried was just discussing. So staff then conducted some comparative research across 5 counties and 1 municipality. Based on that research, we're going to recommend revisions to Article 2 under definitions, which is going to establish those sportsplexes and athletic complexes. Staff will also be recommending revisions to Appendix C, the principal permitted and conditional use table, to align those definitions with the proposed land use of those zoning districts. We will also be recommending amendments to Article 8, the supplemental use regulations, which establish those standards for those land uses. We will be using Dark Sky International and the Illuminating Engineering Society for the lighting aspect under that article. In addition, we'll also be recommending revisions to Article 11, off-street parking standards, as the current zoning ordinance primarily establishes parking requirements for commercial use based on gross floor area. However, athletic fields complexes typically contain little or no floor area, applying to those standards, which may result in insufficient parking. So staff has made some recommendations on that. Staff will also be recommending various changes to Article 10, provisions of signs, as both uses require various signage. Finally, staff will propose revisions to Appendix B, the non-residential development standards table, to acknowledge the maximum impervious surface of athletic fields. It is also important to note that our zoning staff will be doing more research into the non-residential development standards table, as it needs to get fleshed out a little bit more for athletic fields and sports complexes. And I'll hand it over to Mr. Demeko.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Askins, for introducing the the proposed athletic field and sportsplex uses and summarize our proposed amendments. I will be I will be getting into greater detail on those amendments. Starting first with the definitions. An athletic field complex, or AFC for short, is consists of predominantly outdoor athletic recreational facilities and is commercially owned and accommodates various sporting events. Such use can include accessory indoor structures, but they can't exceed 5,000 square feet of gross floor area, or 25% of the site's total gross floor area, whichever measurement is less. A sportsplex, conversely, has predominantly indoor facilities with multidisciplinary uses. Such use can be free, paid, or require membership. In your packet on pages 42 and 43, you'll find images of what the AFC and the sports complex look like respectively, to give you idea on what one could look like and the differences. Next, the proposed change for in Appendix C, principal permitted and conditional use table. Staff proposes to maintain the zoning district's character for both proposed uses. Then, in Article 8, staff proposes to add supplemental use regulations for both of the proposed uses. First, the commonalities. Those both lighting and hours of operation standards. First, the lighting. The mounting height for outdoor lighting must be lower when adjacent to residential zones. Then for brightness, it will vary as multiple uses outdoors require different lighting. Then design of the lighting fixtures must follow IES and Dark Sky International standards. Then the hours of operation. Events must end at 11 p.m. Sportsplexes, we propose that sportsplexes have the following additional regulations with regards to lighting. For brightness, we propose that the max illumination of accessory athletic sports fields is 40-foot candles. But when adjacent to a residential district, this limit drastically is reduced to half a foot candle. Then the hours of operation are between 7 a.m. and 11 p.m. daily. Next up is the changes we propose to Article 11 off-street parking standards. There are different standards. We propose different standards between AFCs and sportsplexes, like my colleague talked about. So for AFC, we propose going the non-traditional route of basing vehicle parking on the maximum field capacity, measured either in 1 space per 4 seats or 1 space per 2 players. The greater measurement shall prevail. Then those also bike parking, which is we propose to be 1 space per 20 provided vehicle parking spaces. Then lastly, the pickup drop-up zone is proposed to be 1 loading area for 3 vehicles per every 4 athletic fields. On the other hand, sportsplex users are proposed to follow a more traditional standard of gross floor area. Namely, we propose 3 spaces per 1,000 square feet of GFA or gross floor area, then 1 space per permanent employee. Okay, now on to Appendix B in the non-residential development standards table. We propose to add the acknowledgement that AFCs have a maximum impervious surface limit of 50%. This comes from their predominant design of green space. It is important to note that zoning staff will be reevaluating the current non-residential site development standards established in Appendix B and potentially drafting a new site development standard chart specifically for AFCs and sportsplexes. As for the landscaping requirements in we propose for both uses, we propose to follow the existing requirements stipulated in subsection I of Article 4, Section 4.11. Last but not the least, sign regulations. So first up for both uses, the following signs we propose to be permitted without a zoning certificate. Any individual sign can at most individually be 6 square feet in area and 4 feet in height. Then that's subsection H. Then subsection I, temporary signs. The maximum total area can go up to 32 square feet unless otherwise approved. Such signs shall be for events, tournaments, registration, or short-term announcements. Meanwhile, freestanding business signs for both proposed uses in all permitted zones do require a zoning certificate. Additional requirements apply in residential, commercial, and rural districts, as well as if such sign is visible from adjacent residential, rural, agricultural properties as determined by the reviewing authority. Then building mounted wall signs can be allowed for sportsplex users only, provided that a special exception permit is obtained for it. Lastly, the regulation we propose for electronic signs that they must be off between 12 a.m. and 7 a.m. if they advertise sponsorships and is within 300 feet of a residential or rural district. Those were the proposed regulations staff proposes for athletic field complex and sportsplex uses.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for staff we can address?
Yes, I just had great job. This is very detailed and you did a good job presenting. So the athletic fields for the non-residential parking standards, if you were to have both athletic fields and a sports complex, I assume you'd be merging both the 3 spaces per 1,000 feet and the provisions you outlined for the fields, so that if there's concurrently things happening, you'd have enough parking for both the indoor and outdoor,
So
if potentially there are both.
so you're talking about like if in a lot, they wanted to build a sportsplex and an athletic field complex
Yeah,
in
within
a
the
large
same,
lot,
yeah.
then we would need to do further research on the parking requirements for it.
I
but-
can speak to this a little bit more, Ms. Askins. So functionally, based on the usage, the zoning ordinance speculates very specifically about how the parking allotment is changed up, and that would be a determination by the zoning administrator, not planning staff.
Okay, great, thank you.
I had a couple
you.
comments.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
There was a reference to a project that had come forward, but we didn't have provisions in the ordinance for it. And I'm curious whether insofar as zoning is concerned, would that project fit within this standard?
So staff did review. We are not just taking a look at one application. We are looking at a review for future applications as well.
Of course,
So
of course.
I will say.
I'm
for
just
what
curious
it's
whether that
worth,
project.
Jonathan,
would-
Andy, and myself were, speaking with that constituent, and I very specifically did not bring Ms. Askins or Ms. Demko up on that. Excuse me, Madison or John up to that, just so they could look at this with a truly clear lens. And regarding that, it's hard to say necessarily what I wanted them to do, and I believe they brought before you today is very good standards that could be put into the regulations without just, as Ms. Askins spoke to, without saying, yes, and this project will magically fit into this, because any adjustments will likely come from what is eventually adopted by the county commission. Because again, if the lighting standards change a bit, the mock-up that Mr. Saunders and myself saw could just be changed automatically just by something as simple as that. I mean, your changes in just the setbacks could massively overhaul how, say, the parking was arranged at that point. So it's a little bit hard to hypothesize about that, because just based on, say, even any one of those small changes could change both the project they try to pursue or other processes hypothetically.
Okay, I just meant generally as to, I assume that project had a proposed location. And I mean, under the Appendix C provisions, for example, you have a not permitted in the rural district.
No, it's a conditional, it's a.
Conditional, well,
And
for a
then-
sportsplex.
Yeah.
Yeah,
mhm.
is it not permitted, so I was curious about.
In terms
Those
of
questions,
following, say,
yeah.
some best practices, we also thought it'd be appropriate to define the distinction between these two different uses. And that also allows a bit of flexibility, both for a developer who goes like, okay, I'm looking to put in a sportsplex. All right, I need to be looking specifically in these zoning districts versus, oh, hey, I have a particular location in mind. Okay, I need to keep it within the confines of either an athletic fields complex in that case. Because without any standards, as you pointed out too earlier, it's hard for a developer to basically look forward or look back based on the location, based on their business model. And by spelling out both two different uses, it kind of allows both the public, an applicant, developer, staff to look at various facets of any development.
Those of us been around here.
Sorry, Commissioner Chrisman, would I?
Those of us that's been around here remember the debacle with all the crying and screaming and everything that went on with Charlestown Racetrack when they had put up their new lights and all that stuff. Remember those guys when all the crime went on around here with all that happened? But anyway, so I have a couple light questions. When you go by the Opera House over here, you see that light on the corner. It's a really nice light, isn't it? Okay, I was afraid it was going to be some bright thing that's going to stand out like a neon light like New York City. And those of us who've flown have seen the lights that are on taxiways and runways. They're bright lights, but they're not, bam, hit you in the eyes. So when we're talking about lighting and things like this, are we talking about those type of lights? Or are we talking about stuff that's going to be like when I go to see the Orioles game that's going to stand out and you're going to be like, bam, there it is. In a rural setting, as she just brought up, it's going to be permissible for these to be here. So are we going to try to push these people to have lower type of lights so that it doesn't, you understand what the light is right down in the corner?
I mean, look at Westfall Fire Department. They got lights that stand out, but they're not blinding. You know, old style type lights, tube and type style lights. I'm kind of being nostalgic here now, but if Mike's back there laughing at me, but you understand what I'm saying? You know, as she had made a comment earlier about setbacks, and we're looking at this, Commissioner Edwards had, you know, are we looking at this so it doesn't lights push over onto somebody else? And I understand you got 11 o'clock cutoff, but what are you all, when we see this, are we going to have some type of example of what we're looking at? I mean, dumb this down to me.
I'm going to answer that one. So with the lighting standards, as you know, with our comprehensive plan, we are aiming to follow the dark sky standards. So within the zoning ordinance, lighting is being addressed. More research is also going to be put into that as well. So there will be cut off and fully shielded lighting fixtures that is supposed to be facing inwards on the athletic fields. And also that illumination has to be decreased as it gets closer to residential development. So you shouldn't be getting a big old floodlight straight into your bedroom.
That's what and it also cut down on all these people coming here screaming and crying, saying we don't want this next door to us because of lighting. So if we address it now, we don't have to worry about it down the road.
I would also note that on page 45, they did
Oh,
spell
really?
out some mounting heights.
I saw that.
Yeah, and I think that is, if anything, the biggest determinant in that regards. And as I mentioned here, oh yeah, and it's on both
Because you go to
sides.
military installations, you're familiar with it. They've got lights everywhere, but you can't tell there's lights everywhere. There are lights everywhere you can see. But, well, what I'm saying is the new standard is you can't see them. I mean, you can see where you need to go, but they're not onto other
Well-
people's property. That's dimmer type of lights and all, you know. That's why I'm just saying we need to look at that, because I think that's going to be the biggest gripe over this whole thing. I don't think it's going to be noise during the day so much. I don't think it's going to be anything else. I think it's going to be lights after evening time.
And I also, the Appendix C section, and maybe we haven't looked deep into this yet, or it's just preliminary, but the RLIC and RG, I almost think those should be permitted because that's residential, light industrial, commercial. I mean, you allowed high density things, and I think this is potentially less of an impact than a high density subdivision. And
I thought that was brought up last time that we
I
would.
can speak to that a little bit because
We would.
essentially planning and zoning staff took a hard look at this, and then we took a second and then kind of a third look at that. Functionally, the reason we're recommending conditional use permits in the RLIC district for both uses is that residential. Because in the event that is, you know, a very likely event that the existing RLIC districts in proximity to residential communities, by requiring conditional use permits, certain standards or like conditions can be placed upon the development to make sure it's mitigating the lighting, potentially the access. And it's not that it's prohibited. If anything, it's a fantastic district to put it in,
Right.
but it's really about making sure that those, in my opinion, the transportation and the lighting is addressed, and the conditional use permit is a very good tool for that.
so maybe for residential growth, we could mirror the RLIC where we have a conditional use instead of not permitted, right?
That is hypothetically possible. My understanding as to why we said no is because the residential growth district in its definition does not allow commercial uses.
Okay.
I would have to pull that up, but I believe that's how that
Does
conversation
it
went.
consider commercial use means it's a sportplex and.
It is commercial.
Commissioner Garcia, I believe you had a few questions.
You know, comments along those lines. I think these are great facilities. I think the land use, I think we need to be very, very careful about where we put these things. They do need to be in somewhat of a developed area. I think most of these where they're permitted and most of the conditional uses are okay. But I do have some serious reservations about in rural districts. You know, if we just take a look at Hyde Park, I mean, we get a lot of influx of people. The road's not designed to do that. I know there's from some of those residents that are there every Saturday morning because I coach soccer there. So I would ask staff to take another look at this. I'm a little concerned about compatibility. I think the 35-foot lighting thing is a little undersized, particularly when you talk about athletic fields. Those need to generally going to be taller. They're going to be about 50 feet. They're not going to be like a parking lot light. So we need to take a look at that really in depth. As far as sportsplexes and buildings, I've got some concern about design. and actually where these are located. What I don't see, I think you probably need to work a little bit more on the signage standards. I'll be more than happy to make some recommendations on those. I think we need to be very judicious in these and not looking for a site that's already zoned that to put something. I think it's maybe looking at the other way around where's density, where can we find those locations? And then if it needs a rezoning, it needs a rezoning. But I think backing into a location in a rural area is a mistake. I think we're going to cause more problems. And I think that's actually contravening to, our comprehensive plan a little bit. So I think we also need to take a look at that. Where's the zoning, where this is going to be permitted? And is that in conformance to what we've said in our comprehensive plan? And I would argue putting a sports field, even though it's a low density use comparatively to other things, is not really in line with what we were expecting from our agricultural areas and some of our farmland.
Well, hold a minute. So you want to put houses in agricultural land?
Commissioner, I am very sorry. Would you be so kind?
You want to put houses in agricultural land, but you don't want to put a.
I'm not advocating for that at all.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that this use can be incompatible with even residential.
Yeah.
And I beg to differ that the lighting is not going to, if you're going to have sports fields, they're going to be brighter than you think they are, and they're going to you only need to be taller.
Bruce, I agree with him, like, especially like the traffic.
Yeah.
Like, think of Height Road, that is a mess.
So
Well, they can't put it on Shirley Road. There's no.
Right, that's what he's saying.
That's
like,
what I'm saying.
But there are places like Summer Point Road that's rolled. There's already a ball fields and already up there. Does that
Maybe-
make sense?
Sure, but it's not like what this is going to bring.
Okay.
You don't, this by right would, or at least by conditional use, at least in rural, we're saying it's okay. And that's really not, I don't think our intent.
So
I
would
think
it
our
be a-
intent is if you have a compatible use adjacent,
Right.
fine. You're going to go to Summit Point, fine. You want to go to somewhere, where there's farmland all around, I don't think you want one of those in there. And that's what we're saying is permitted. And I think we'd have a tough time as a commission maintaining consistency in approvals.
So you're saying
and/or
it'd be a
denials.
hard sell?
I think we'd leave ourselves open to questioning why we would maybe say yes in one rural zone in the middle of nowhere versus something like Summit Point if it's already zoned that way. But I think we need to look a little closer at compatibility is what I'm talking about. And I think you need to cross-reference the comprehensive plan a little bit and look what land use is saying. And I think that goes for even some of the cases we've talked to today. We need to really cross-reference that in conformance with what we were saying we want for our future. I don't think there's any argument. These are nice. I like soccer places that have indoor soccer. As Commissioner Keys knows.
Yes.
And I think the design of a sportsplex needs to be really looked at. If it's going to be, some of these are 2 stories, 3, and they can look industrial. Sometimes they are. They're just an
So these
industrial
aren't the
building.
normal.
No, this would be like major.
Okay, that's what I'm asking because
like,
I'm not familiar with what you're talking about.
Indoor facilities,
You're gonna have,
tons of stuff going on.
you're gonna have a lot of out of town tournaments coming in. You're gonna have out of town teams
Yeah.
coming in.
A lot of times these things will have like little dog parks and stuff.
Dog-
So these like the ones they're talking about putting off exit 8 up.
So there's one in Winchester, I think the one in,
So that's
Right.
what we're talking about. The ones like they're getting ready to put in, Berkeley County's getting ready to put in up exit 8.
I don't know what they.
Okay.
Commissioner Garcia, question for you. If we are a little concerned about putting them in rural, what if we in a say hypothetically all this passes and we see a subdivision come in for an approval and they're willing to proffer installing 2 fields within there, would that, if we don't have it as a permitted use, would that technically not comply with that proffer to add athletic fields to a subdivision?
I think it's important to divide the difference between what might be 2 fields as part of an active recreation area for such a subdivision versus an athletic fields complex, which requires a great deal more, say, infrastructure and parking versus just 2 fields.
Okay.
If you're hypothetically speaking about a proffer of a full athletic field complex, as part of approval of a subdivision. They would also, in that hypothetical, as this is currently drafted, need to receive a conditional use permit as this is currently drafted to still get that use,
So
as
if
that
it's
would
just-
functionally be in a lot of ways kind of a separate project, because you're talking about a development of a site plan for that athletic field complex, separate from the major subdivision as you brought up in this example.
So like if there were two fields, that would be an accessory and not a,
Could be accessory use.
I don't want
Right.
to be
Almost be like a playground.
stepping on zoning's toes too much here,
Yep.
but by that definition, yes, I think what I would call that the active recreation area. That is an amenity to that subdivision.
in those
If you're talking about
cases,
something
you
the
wouldn't
intensity of a 18, yeah,
And if it's not the zoned as this, you wouldn't necessarily have to light it.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the key into it as far as, so looking at what you're talking about is putting it more like it's like a playground within a subdivision for Parks and
It
Rec.
could be they could use that, any open space, and it could be some residual open space that's unusable.
Uh-huh.
And that's what they put on there, and that's fine. I think it's serving that, if it's designed to be serving that community.
So it's apples and oranges to this stuff.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I think we need to look a bit, again, staff, if you can just look at compatibility and what the land use plan says, and where does it make sense?
So regarding that, staff's ask from this meeting is we would like to get the specific direction on what changes need to be made to this. I'm hoping not to do a back and forth review. We want to know a good idea of what changes, and we're happy to look into stuff, but we have had this since, so we've been able to do some good research on this. So it really now is into, okay, does the commission as a whole believe that we need to increase the height for the lights? Because potentially we might see a lot of waivers, because if 50 is the standard, you guys might be seeing a lot of waivers for that standard if that's what's adopted.
I think we need to look at that, and I think I'll be willing to take that on. And I don't know if I need to submit that to staff or the president, but I can submit that, and what my recommended changes would be, and or research that needs to be done to come up with some good things. You have some good bones here. Don't get me wrong. I think you did a lot of good work here, but I think we need to look at really honing in on some of the signage standards, lighting, heights, and locationally where these best suited. Because I think we're getting to an area where we don't want to put these in areas that we really want to be rural in character.
So would you
Can,
like us to
can
do
we
some type
just
of-
essentially, can I appoint, or we appoint Mr. Garcia to kind of touch this up and submit this and come back?
I would like a timeline, as in September meeting, October, so on and so forth.
I would recommend
indefinite.
September. Again, to your point, this has been on an agenda, so we need to get this, move this forward.
Yeah, we would like to keep this moving as much as we
Absolutely.
can. If it's September, as part of any motion, Commissioner Garcia, as well as other commissioners, have brought forward a few different questions. Would you like to include that as part of the motion of stuff to continue research? Because while we have John and Madison have both been working on this, we'd like to capitalize on that research bandwidth that we don't necessarily always have. I'd happy to include that as part of the motion, or when a motion is made to research or find additional backing into locating where these might go or be most suited.
I don't need to bring up any more about lighting. I ask the questions because if he's going to address it within his presentation, he's already on board with what the concerns are about lighting.
Right.
So we don't have to add that on the motion.
I guess to answer your question, I would submit as well questions to staff
Okay.
for additional research
Well-
as taking on that task to mark up and review this in detail and make some recommendation as well as ask questions.
Is that the motion?
So we need to make a motion for him to do that?
Yes.
I make a motion for Mr. Garcia to proceed forward with what he said.
Hiding.
He had a lot of it there.
Second, and I guess to work directly with staff
Yes.
as to not violate
Yes.
open meetings. Okay. Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to be putting down, the motion is to have Commissioner Garcia work directly with staff to make edits to the proposed text amendments to be brought forward at the next September meeting.
Sounds good.
Okay, as someone who's got to like double check the minutes, I want to make this as easy as possible for Ms. Walsall, so.
Right.
Okay. Maybe on the same list, but I'm just asking my colleagues if they're concerned about the parking. I'm concerned about 2 spaces per seat when the stadium requirements, existing stadium requirements, at least as it's reported in the memos, is for four spaces. Sorry, that's probably,
Which page are you?
let's see.
Hey, let's vote on the motion here at hand. We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Next,
Sorry.
we have
one
reports from
space
legal
for
counsel.
four Versus one space
was
for
that?
two.
I didn't.
I'm not aware of any changes. They're in the briefing stage of that case, so I have nothing to report. It's outside counsel, but we stay in touch.
Commissioner Krista, you stated a parking. Did you want to make it a motion
I
about?
really just wanted to ask colleagues if they had a concern. You all have more experience with this, but if our existing standards for stadiums is to have a parking space for every 2 seats, and this one proposes a parking space for every 4 seats, is that adequate?
I'm going to let it come back. So I do have experience with this, and I'm going to let it come back, and then we'll talk about it.
I've been putting my
Okay.
faith in Mr. Garcia's
Okay.
expertise on this, and then we come back and discuss it.
Really, what we need is a
Right.
clean copy to work with, and
Right.
then we can come in with specific edits.
I'll look at this all inclusive of traffic and parking and
Yeah.
things.
All right, agenda item number 8, there's nothing to report from legal counsel. Number 9, planner's memo.
I will also do my best to keep this brief. Essentially, I have 2 requests before you today in this regard. Specifically, we've had a few different requests, Magnolia Springs in the June or July meeting. I'm sorry, my memory's failing me right now. And there have been some other smaller requests about making small scale amendments to major subdivisions. And there's a few as well with minor subdivisions. Ironically, some of them have been on adopting or implementing a dry hydrant in a minor subdivision. And it has bothered me on a professional level about how some of those amendment provisions are drafted. At this time, I do not have any draft. I want to do this. What I'd like is Planning Commission's permission to do some research while we have John here to begin looking at alternate ways we can be doing this. I'm not saying this is going to turn into anything, but it has made very specific changes, small changes, untenable. And frankly, it's probably perfectly fine for large changes. I think major subdivisions should not be up for staff to make a bunch of changes to that drastically change it. That's inappropriate in a lot of different ways. However, for small edits, especially for minors, that is something staff would like to look into, making perhaps more workable and usable for the community. So I would request that Planning Commission gives the staff the direction through a motion that we can begin researching potential changes to the amendment provisions of the subdivision regulations.
I make a motion to allow staff to make potential changes to the amendment provisions of the subdivision ordinance.
Second.
Been properly moved in second. Let the staff look into making the changes to the subdivision ordinance. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. The last one is also quite brief. As some of you may recall, Charles Kane was our intern during last summer, and one of the last things I had him do was a small text amendment, just some write-up regarding reviewing agencies, which was a part of text that was first implemented into the comprehensive plan. And we got rather busy during the ensuing period, and there was some staff change. It was very easy to put that on a back burner. And now that I've got some additional bandwidth, thanks to some new staff members, I would request permission to bring forward the text amendment regarding reviewing agencies to the Planning Commission at their next or potentially October meeting at this point, because truthfully, the September meeting is getting a bit full. I would like your permission to bring that before the Planning Commission for their review, consideration, and possible scheduling of a public hearing.
I make a motion that staff brings the
Reviewing agencies.
draft amendment about the reviewing agencies to the October meeting, and utilize Mr. Demasco as needed for whatever research you have to do to finish it out.
Second.
Been properly moved in second. Any discussion?
Just this, I think it sounds fine. Obviously, I don't know about the urgency. I understand using staff resources. We do have 3 really high priorities for text amendments that are already on our agenda immediately. I know the county commission has in the last two meetings, asked about the status of the solar text amendment. And so
I am happy to bring this
concerned-
forward at the October meeting if the commission would like.
What's that?
Staff is amenable to bring forward the reviewing text amendment at the October or September. Frankly, I'd like it to be one of those two, but as I mentioned, September meeting, and to your point, Commissioner Edwards, it is a stacked meeting.
Motion says
Okay.
October. Yeah.
Oh, I'm
Right.
so sorry.
Right. That was the motion. I'm only suggesting that when you do have these staff resources, I had asked Mr. Bell about some scrivener's errors in the document. I think if you could use your talent that you have on board to take a look at the draft before it comes back to us in September, I think it might be useful. There's different terminology used for the same system. There are some, there's an awkward language, there's inconsistencies in the ground disturbance ratio, just little things like that. There's scrivener's errors, but I think if we could get a cleaner copy because we put a fresh set of eyeballs on it, again, respectfully, if you could use your staff that way, I think it might be helpful to us in September.
I don't think that would require a motion. I'm happy to mention to Mr. Bell this question or, thoughts.
We have a motion on the table in a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
I
Motion
had one
carries.
small thing. I'm sorry, Commissioner Smith, but I do believe it's very brief. Commissioner Garcia, you contacted me potentially about training. Did you want to make a motion about that at this time, or is this premature?
No, we can do that now. So the last few weeks, I've put some training together for planning commissioners that's published by the American Planning Association as well as the American Institute of Certified Planners. So I have a series of trainings that we can undertake at the beginning of the new year. So I will make a motion to have that training schedule discussed and possibly adopted as for the following year.
Second.
To be clear, this would be to put it on the October meeting potentially to discuss the various trainings.
Various trainings that we will do. They're all, and if there's more discussion, I can kind of elaborate.
So the motion is to put this on October's agenda for further discussion about how many days, course, whatever this is.
And moving forward with training
To move forward.
in
with.
the next year.
Those are two different questions.
Yeah.
So point of order. Do we need to have a motion to put something on the agenda, or can we just request it?
So we haven't really established that necessarily. So functionally, staff is the one who puts everything on the agenda. So as the way of making sure it is properly on an agenda, starting essentially with the dry hydrants, this is more or less what we've been doing. It's probably a procedure we also probably should look into, but it seemed like the cleanest way to make sure it properly ended up on an agenda because the bylaws are kind of quiet to it. This has been the solution.
I wouldn't think you'd have to have a motion to do it when the president could add something to the
Correct.
agenda.
Tim can add,
Which also,
Tim
yeah.
can add to the
Yes.
agenda.
If that's the preferred method moving forward, staff is fine as long as legal isn't about to say something I'm unaware of. I'm seeing a nod, so I think that's good. Yeah.
My only purpose for a motion here is just to be transparent with the community that we're doing what we can to adhere to the planning standards that are nationally accepted, not only by professional planners, but planning commissions all over the country, and that we're addressing some of the issues that come before commissions across the board.
So we currently have a training provision in our bylaws.
So
That's
this would adhere to that. It
This
would
would
be
adhere to that,
not add to us.
Not add to it, just adhere.
I'm just
to get us away from the same stuff that gets
topical
recycled
subjects
every
that are
year.
pertinent to our
I'm cool with that.
practice of planning as commissioners, and it's geared towards folks like us that will come from a various backgrounds and expertise, but following, again, the planning standards that are set forth by the American Planning Association and the American Institute of
But again,
Certified Planners.
all we have on the table right now is to discuss this in October, not.
That's right.
To discuss the training schedule that I'm recommending.
It's been moved and we have a second.
Second.
Properly moved and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
I'm good now. Thank you so much, commissioners. Next meeting's in September.
Move to
Okay.
adjourn.
Second.
Been properly moved and second. We adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed. Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you so much, commissioners.
Kara.
The other thing that they were rather
You said
vague
that?
about was that they were going to be looking.
I'm open all day.
Where is that?
Holler at
one?
me.
They were going to be